I'm Mayor Joe Maturo of the town of East Haven. Been here 16 out of the last 20 years. There was a little 4-year interim in between where I lost and came back. So it's been 16 out of the last 20 years, and it's the greatest shoreline town east of the Mississippi is what I call it.
Joe, you've been here a long time.
It's been a long time, and if somebody would have said to you 20 years ago when I was on the fire department that I would have been mayor, they would have said, you're crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
What made you decide to do it?
It was done on a bet.
Seriously?
Yeah. I retired from the fire department, and we were hanging around having coffee in the morning and talking about national politics. You know, how we all do in the morning at the diners. And somebody says, well, why don't you get involved locally? And we made a bet, and after 3 losses, here I am. I lost my first 3 times out. So I was a little persistent. And believe it or not, with the help of John Giordano at that time, who helped convince me, who at that time was in the opposite party, and he was the youngest state representative in the state of Connecticut at one time. But yeah, John and I have been friends for a long time. We had the same group of friends in school and after school, hanging around down the beach in Memorgwin. And then with him being in the insurance business, of course, running a municipality, there's always claims from our community. We had a couple of serious claims with flooding in our schools. 2 of our schools had some flooding problems in the middle of the night and on weekends. That's when they always happen, when there's nobody around. Knowing my relationship with John, knowing how above board he is, and knowing that he cares about the town of East Haven, the first one I call, of course, would be John. And all my experiences with John on a professional level have been just as good on a professional level as they were socially and on a personal friendship. John always made sure that everything was done right, that everything was done on time, and that everything was done with budget. He'd call people in. Our schools had to be opened because they didn't happen in the summertime. Of course, whenever there's an emergency, it's like your furnace going out. Your furnace doesn't go out in the summertime.
Right.
Your furnace goes out in the wintertime in January when there's a snowstorm going outside. And that's the same thing would happen with our schools when we had problems. But John made sure that the schools were open as soon as they could be on that Monday morning, called other assets in to help clean up, suck up the water and take care of the damage and do the painting and do whatever had to be done, fix the problem to make sure it's done. So throughout my 16 years on and off here over the last 20, like I said, whenever there was a claim, whether it was a roof problem, a flooding problem, no matter what happened in our community, we always use John. And my finance director, who has a great amount of experience as a finance director in our town, they work side by side. The finance director and the adjuster work side. Once I turn it over to the adjuster, he works alongside with my finance director. And him and Paul Rizzo, who's our finance director, got along great. And Paul never had to come to me and say, Mayor, we have a problem with the adjuster. Everything got done. And so my tribute to John is, whenever I'm in trouble, call Johnny G. And that's the way it's always been. So Johnny G's a friend of mine.
Wow, it sounds like you say that with a lot of value and emotion attached to it.
Well, because we've been friends for so long. At our age now, John and I, we're getting up there. And we don't have many friends who we've known and still hang around with back from our school days. There's usually 1 or 2 guys you can count on that you still recall from your days of school. And John and I are 2 of those guys. Once in a while we'll bounce around and bump into somebody else. But John and I still live in town. John and I still have a lot of contact with each other. So it's very seldom where you have a relationship as long as, 50, 60 years like John and I have. And that's important. It doesn't happen that often, especially with the movability of people today. Who's moving out of town, who's moving out of state, who's here, who's there. John and I, no matter where we were, we always kept in touch.
You guys have been together a long time.
It has been a long time, and it's been a good time. Very seldom have John and I ever had any differences because he's a loyal guy. And that's another thing. You don't count too many friends that you can say are loyal. When you need something, you can go to. And John's just that type of guy. And he's fun. I don't know if you've ever met John, outside of business, but John's a funny guy. We have a good time together. We know how to kibitz.
Sounds like you guys have a great time.
Yeah, we do.
Tell me more about one experience that you had from the phone call in the morning that said, Mayor, we have a problem. And then what happened and what you did and how you got involved with John and what he did.
Well, I always I'm one of the first ones to get the call.
I'll bet.
That there's a problem. And if it's the type of problem that John's company can handle, I have John on my cell phone. So my first next move is to call Johnny G and say, John, hey, we got a problem over at Hay School. There's water on the floor. It's a Saturday night. You got to get somebody over there. After that phone call, I very seldom have to make another call to Johnny G. He usually calls me after that and says, Mayor, here's where we are. Here's who I have going over there. Don't worry about a thing. And that's basically how it happens with John. He has a type of company where once you make that first call, you put the ball on his plate. And then he takes over from there. Next thing you know, he'll be calling you up and telling you the job's complete. The school's back in your hands, or the check is in the mail. But that's what happens with John. And that's what type of company he runs. And he has good people working for him, too. And he has some good local people working for him, who I know them also. So he's got a very good staff, a very loyal staff, and they know what has to be done. And that's why his business is as successful as it is.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with me? This is really going to be online for other people to learn about your experience with him. Anything else you'd like to share?
Oh, that Johnny G loves his dog. He had this little dog, and all he did was talk about that dog all the time. And when he lost the dog, Johnny G and I, it's always an experience for somebody to lose an animal. It's like losing somebody close in your family. So, and the only reason why I say that, because as John feels about other people and as dedicated as he is to his daughters and his son, that's how he was with his little dog. And so he really cared about that animal, and it was a tough time for us to go through, as it is for any animal when we lose one. But John and I stuck it out, and now he has another dog. So, as everyone else, when they lose a pet, they get another pet and they love it. But that just shows the dedication he has to not only his family, but to the things around him, whether it's his dog or he's got a beautiful car. That's his little baby too. He's dedicated to everything he put in his job. He's just a dedicated guy, and that's what makes it easy to stay friends with somebody for so long, that they're dedicated and loyal.
Wow, very powerful. Thank you.